So I appreciate you being on. It's my first one of these since September, so I'm really glad to have this time to talk with you some. And as you know, this weekend is as big a fight as any with John Jones coming back, but
Yeah, I'm
you have a little
I'm
bit
real
more
excited to
perspective.
check that out.
You have a little bit more
I
perspective than I do, or a majority of other people, in that you've been in the octagon with John Jones. So, can you talk about what you're expecting to see out of your former opponent this weekend? And if you have a prediction for the fight, can you share that with us?
I think it's gonna be I'm really excited to see what he's got in store because he's always been such a dominant fighter. I think him moving up to heavyweight is just like everybody said for a while is it's been a long time coming. Um, I think he's gonna adapt to it well. I'm sure, you know, I don't everybody's like questioning about whether his cardio is going to be the same or if he's going to be able to handle getting hit the same or all these X factors about moving up a weight class. And I personally think he's going to be just fine. Like some of those light heavyweights hit just as hard as the heavyweights. He's been tagged before and shown that he's resilient enough to stand and hang with some of the biggest power punchers in the light heavyweight division. And he's a crafty guy. Like he mixes things up well. He does his homework better than probably anybody out there. And he's been able to be the dominant champion that he was at 205 amidst veritable killers. Like he's made great fighters. Just he's made very short work of great fighters out there. So I don't think he's going to have any trouble bringing that same game to up a weight class to the heavyweight division. Um, I would definitely. I don't think it's going to go the distance. I think we see Jones with a finish win here. Not really sure how. We saw when Gon fought Francis that his takedown defense wasn't what we thought it could be. And Gon uses his range very well, but that's going to be really difficult against Jones because Jones also has such a amazing range and he can close distance as well as he can when he wants to take it to the ground. So I think we're going to see Jones with a knockout finish or a submission win.
As far as your own personal timetable, I know you didn't fight very long ago, but do you have anything in mind about your timetable and what you'd like to do next?
Right now I'm just looking to I'm healthy. I'm very fortunate. I didn't really sustain any major injuries from the last fight. So I'm back in the gym already and just working to get in a better shape, fine tune some things that correct some mistakes that I made moving forward and get lined up with the next fight. So hopefully sooner than later. I'm looking to be in there as soon as possible. April, May, that would be awesome.
And I know the result didn't go the way you wanted it to, but it was a huge event. You got to go to Australia. Can you talk about what that experience was like, going and traveling in Perth and taking all that in?
It was awesome. The travel was daunting. We had about 30 hours of total travel time, including two-hour layovers when we flew out of JFK, which is about a 2.5 hour drive from where I live, and then it was about a 8 hour flight from JFK to Frankfurt, Germany, 2 hour layover in Germany to Singapore, and then 2 hour layover in Singapore with a 5 hour flight to Perth. But once we got there, it was cool, man. It was an incredible feeling. Everybody was the people in Australia were so welcoming and so excited to have us there, and really just like even after the loss, fighting one of their own guys. Even after the loss, everybody was really appreciative and showed support. Feel like back home a lot of times when once you lose, like, people are just kind of like kicking you while you're down. They're like talking trash about you. They're running their mouth about this, and it was almost the polar opposite of that over there. So I gained a really good appreciation for the fans that we have for the sport throughout the world, um, and it was amazing to be back in front of a crowd because all of my fights leading up to this have been at the Apex Center, which is like maybe 100 people total as far as fans. And to be able to walk out into that arena and hear the eruption of the crowd, go through the ceremonial weigh-ins and do all the interviews and everything to the level that it was, they still do all that, but it's on such a different level and such a different amount of production involved in it, and it was just such a great experience that I once in a lifetime opportunity that I'm glad I took.
I'm glad you mentioned the Apex because this is kind of something that I ask everybody that's fought at both the Apex and in front of a crowd like you did. Have you noticed any differences between the smaller octagon at the Apex versus the time you spent in the regular 30-foot one in Australia?
No, I didn't personally see a big difference. I mean, probably because my fight was kind of short, but um, it didn't feel that much larger being in there. You know, maybe that's because I'm one of the bigger guys. Being a heavyweight, I don't feel like I have as much room to move around to begin with, uh, in the smaller one. But it didn't seem like it was dramatically bigger to me.
Can you talk about your experience of signing with the UFC? It was in the middle of 2020. A lot of people got that call because of the circumstances that were going on at that time. And I know you took your debut fight on very short notice. Can you talk about that experience?
That was amazing. You know, I was at a point where, you know, I'm not young. I'm definitely not the youngest guy on the roster by any means. And I've been chasing this dream for a very long time to, you know, to turn it into a reality. And it was getting to the point where once the pandemic hit, that I wasn't sure that I would be able to have that dream come to fruition. So getting the call when I did, you know, it really just kind of floored me. It had me absolutely awestruck. You know, I was maybe, yeah, I just left the gym that I was previously training with, and was training with my new coach only like once or twice a week because of the stipulations that we had with quarantine and gyms not being allowed to be open. So um, I was ridiculously overweight because all the gyms were closed, and you know, just like a lot of people were like just kind of having a couple of beers and enjoying some junk food and just being like, ah, this sucks. You know, I'm gonna eat my feelings. But you know, being the 25 pounds overweight, it obviously had me being like, oh crap, you know. But at the same time, like I said, chase this dream for as long as you can. You know, as long as I had been. You don't just when it finally comes knocking, the opportunity comes knocking. You don't just no, I'm not ready for it right now. I'm not in my prime. You get up, you do what you can with what you've got going, and you get after it. And then you know I strung together my 3 wins after making my debut on a loss. But to me, I went into that debut fight with the intentions of really just getting my foot in the door. I was obviously went in aiming to do my best and hoping to pull out a W. But in the back of my head, I was like, I got my foot in the door with a full camp behind me. I can show these guys what I'm really capable of, and that's exactly what I did.
Can you talk about that kind of mentality? Because I'm a college student, and a lot of what I do is all about stuff like this. Is all about chasing dreams. So can you talk about that mindset of just your commitment to your goals for such a long period of time?
And I don't know. I just, maybe sometimes I wonder if there's like something wrong with me to even pursue something that strongly for that long of a period without having it, you know, have any major returns. But deep down inside, it was just one of those things where I could just feel it. You know, it was part of who I am. It was one of the things that made me the most happy. And for so long, the longer that I did it, I couldn't envision myself doing anything other and being even remotely as happy as I was training and fighting and competing in this sport. So, you know, I think it's hard to really nail it down as to how I was able to keep motivated with it as long as I did. But there's a tremendous amount of contributing factors that go along with it, like the support that I have from the people around me that count the most, like my wife and my kids and my family, you know, my coaches and my friends. And then there's also a part of me that loves to prove people wrong. And, you know, when somebody's like, "Hey, you can't do that," I'm like, "Oh yeah, watch me, watch me. I'm going to show you." Uh, you know, and there's plenty of times where I've slipped and stumbled or just come out flat completely. And but I've always been able to kind of pick myself up and just not quit, never give up. It's always just kind of been burned into my head to you don't stop. You don't stop until the goal that you're trying to accomplish has been accomplished and achieved. And then you set a new goal and you raise the bar and put the same amount of work, effort, and ethic and dedication into that.
when you're training for a fight, back to the technical aspect of things, when you're training for a fight, what are some of the main things? I know this might differ depending on who you're fighting, but what are some of the things that you want to sharpen up and maybe just work on a consistent basis?
Um, I probably want to sharpen up my boxing just a little bit more, tighten my hands up. I have a tendency to, I've got a lot of power, but I have a tendency to not be able to really deliver the full power with a lot of my strikes, because my technique's just a little bit off. Maybe I'm reaching a little bit too far here, too far there. The footwork's off, so we're gonna go back and tighten that stuff up, and then just general general all around conditioning and strength. Like I'm not weak, but I don't feel like I've ever been like the strongest guy in the cage a lot of times. So I've been working on getting stronger, hitting the gym, getting my numbers up in there, and then working on obviously being able to transfer those gym numbers over to the mats where it really counts.
So you're nearing your 3-year mark in the UFC. That'll be this year, which is wild for me to think about also because I had just started my senior year of high school. And so what are some of the ways that your game has improved since you signed with the UFC and made your debut?
Um, I think I've been able to truly dedicate my training to the way that I need to be training as a professional athlete. This is one of those sports where even when making it to the UFC, it's not like getting signed to the NFL where we have a lot of extras and amenities and things that we're given and made more readily available to make our training and adaptations a lot easier and kind of level the playing field, so to speak. Um, but I still I have a gym here that I opened up a year ago that I've been building and working on because obviously we know athletes can't compete in their sport for eternity, as much as we would like to. We get older, we slow down, things get difficult, injuries happen, life happens. So laying the groundwork to have something that makes me almost as equally happy by teaching the next generation of fighters, um, is something I've been working on with that. But yeah, it's kind of like validated me a lot and really made me feel more justified in the actions that I've been taking and shown me that I've had the right ideas all along with certain things. Um, and being able to put them into place and seeing these other guys put the same actions and plans in for their own training camps as well. It just more than anything, it's kind of validated my own personal beliefs and thoughts.
How did your experience before the UFC help you? Did you feel prepared once you got to the UFC? Because I mean, now you had a fair number of fights beforehand, but now we're seeing guys get signed at 3-0 or not having as much experience. But how did your experience prepare you once you did get to the UFC?
I think the biggest difference it made for me having more fights, than some of these other guys getting signed after like 5 or 6 fights, is that it prepared me for that kind of like shell shock you get of walking into an arena and the production level that the UFC has. Um, it didn't really like phase me walking out in front of like this giant crowd or being on international television or having the interviews to prepare for and things of that nature. I think that was the biggest thing because lots of people can perform greatly in the gym and it's easy to perform well when you're the hometown guy or you got all your fans and friends and family supporting you at home and you can like look outside the cage and see in the second or third row a bunch of people or hear the whole place cheer your name. um, but when you don't necessarily have that, some people it causes them to falter and it can be a difficult thing to recover from for a lot of people.
Now that we talked about the crowd earlier, and you talked about your experience. Now that the UFC is kind of getting on the road a little bit more, is there any particular location that maybe you'd hope to fight in the UFC at?
Well, so I live in Connecticut, so I would love to have a fight. My best chance of having a hometown crowd would be like in the Boston Garden or Madison Square Garden in New York. That would be awesome. It's like We have a Mohegan Sun Arena here in Connecticut. It's about an hour from where I live in Connecticut that I've fought at, and they do some more local promotions and stuff like that. If the UFC ever came back there one day, that'd be awesome. Or even more amazing to me would be if they did it at like the XL Center in Hartford in the capital. But with that being said, I know that, like Madison Square Garden is really not that far away for a lot of people, and same thing with the Boston Garden. So probably won't come all the way back to, they probably won't come straight back to Connecticut, but Boston or New York would be a freaking dream come true.
Do you have a favorite of your own fights, and if so, which one is it?
Um, I have two. They're kind of like tied for each other, and the one of them was the last fight I had before getting picked up for the UFC, which was against Durley Brownstrup for CES. We had a great fight. It was a real good, kind of a classic Parker Porter fight at this point, where it's kind of what my MO has been, where we just kind of slugging it out back and forth, lots of volume, lots of strikes. There was a tremendous amount of respect for each other in that fight, during the fight, and after the fight. Like that was a fun fight. We had a good time doing that. And then the Josh Parisian fight, uh, my second fight in the UFC, was his debut. We set a record for volume of strikes thrown in a 3-round heavyweight bout, and then it broke that afterwards. But it was again same kind of situation. A tremendous amount of respect. I had known Josh from trying out for the Ultimate Fighter. The season that he was on, I tried out for as well. So we were both out in Vegas at the same time, doing all the interviews and the medicals and prep work for possibly getting selected. So it was cool to get to know him in that aspect, and then meet up with him again on the opposite side of the cage in the UFC. So yeah, those are my two favorite fights of mine.
What do you think of this new veterans format that they got going for this new Ultimate Fighter season? Now, there's been a lot of details kind of going around about, who's in, who's out, is Conor McGregor picking people, is he not? But what are your thoughts on just that idea of having veterans go into the tough house and fight it out?
You know, I don't know why they wouldn't just put it on a card. Maybe their personalities make for some great television. That's the only difference I can think of, because they're going to be obviously talented fighters, talented guys setting everything up the way that they're doing. Um, but and as far as the Conor McGregor, rumors about him picking guys and getting people seated on the roster and booting other people off, I don't know, man. It's pure speculation to me at this point. I'm not in it, so I can't really fully give my opinion on it. But I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if it is happening.
So, second to last question here with this one, but what are some of the things about your game? Talked about training a few minutes ago, but what are some of the aspects of your game that are the most dangerous?
My cardio, without a doubt. I can push a pace that a lot of big boys can't push.
And last one, talked about with your gym. What are some of the things that you would want to impart to the fighters who will come after?
The biggest thing is for me streamlining the process for a lot of these guys. It took me almost 14 years to actually make my dream become a reality. From my pro debut to actually getting signed to the UFC. And there were hiccups here, a lot of trial and error, figuring things out on my own kind of things, a lot of information from people I thought had my best interests in mind that coming to find out it didn't, like being too trustworthy or, whatever it may be. The biggest thing that I want to do for the next group of guys, besides actually give them a solid skill set and mentality, is to help them see the process for what it really is and make intelligent choices so that they can get there quicker, have a more successful, longer career, and just have the opportunity to get where I'm at sooner.
That wraps up what I had for you. I really appreciate your time. Like I said, it's been a few months since I did one of these, so it's great talking with you and great insight. And I wish you the best of luck for what's coming next. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you fight again.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too.